Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to announce our guest for the pre-conference podcast episode for the Greenwashing Legal Risks Management Summit that will be taking place in Brussels on November 8th. We have here Esteban Mezzano, General Counsel for the Corporate Operations and Sustainability of Nestlé. Esteban, thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank you, Georgie, for having me.
Thank you. Esteban, I would like to go with a couple of questions related to your role and related to what you will be presenting about. So to start with, can you tell us a little bit more about your role in Nestlé?
Sure. Thank you, Georgie. So I am a lawyer. I'm working in Nestle since 20 years now. Half of it in markets in Argentina and Chile. I'm Argentinian myself. And half of it, 10 years in Switzerland, in the headquarters of Nestle in Vevey. Since 3 years now, we created a special unit in the Nestle legal department that is dealing with ESG or sustainability. Mm-hmm. This is a new unit because, of course, it's a new topic. Mm-hmm. It's a new topic in the way that we are articulating it right now. But of course, sustainability or creating share value, it is something that has been forever in our company. But I think now everyone is experiencing a very intense focus on this agenda, and rightly so. So I'm very happy to be able to lead this team of lawyers 100% focused on sustainability and ESG, and to be collaborating with the agenda of Nestle in sustainability. When we talk about agenda of Nestle in sustainability, we are talking of course, climate change, the plastics challenge, water, and human rights. Although there are more topics, those are the four key ones. But what is interesting of these topics is that all of them are interconnected, and we're working with a system. And the food industry has a very important role to play in this system, in this ecosystem of these four topics. And this is our approach as Nestle. We work as a system, and we would like to create a food system that is sustainable in the future. We need to feed the population in a sustainable way. And agriculture is an essential part of that. And of course, we would like to change the way we procure our commodities, and we have a concept for that, which is the regenerative agriculture. So sorry for this long explanation, but I think that it is to describe a little bit what is the scope of my role.
No, that was a very detailed explanation, and thank you very much for telling us in detail. Well, partly because you've described it from your perspective of what you have dedicated your career to in building in Nestle, and also from what you will be presenting about, I would like to ask you a question related to the discussion and how is it important to discuss creating the right conditions for the brands to communicate the ESG, and why is it important now?
Yeah, I think that's the core question, and of course the main topic of the conference, which is how to communicate on ESG. And this agenda that I commented for Nestle is not an agenda particularly for our company.
Mhm.
Every company is working on these topics, and many of those efforts that companies are doing are efforts that are coming at the moment on a voluntary basis, most of them. And requires, of course, a lot of resources and a lot of efforts from the different part of the organization. And of course, it's important for companies to communicate on those efforts. The communication of those efforts can bring risks because, of course, when you communicate, you're exposing yourself, you're under the spotlight, and yes, a lot of people are watching and will hold you accountable of what you are communicating. And that's the risk of greenwashing, which is the topic of the conference. Of course, if you don't communicate, you are not running the risk. But certainly, if the question is, should companies remain silent on all by what sharing of what they are doing in sustainability? And certainly the answer is no. It's a clear no. It is very important for companies to communicate on sustainability. And I can think on two main reasons of why this is important. The first reason, of course, is a business reason. This topic of sustainability is becoming very relevant for consumers. Consumers are really looking at companies who are being responsible with the planet, with the communities, and this is great that this is happening because behind every purchase, we like to say that there is a vote for a better society. So I think it's very important that companies can communicate what they are doing so they can attract the consumers that would like to support the responsible companies. The other reason is that we also need consumers to help us, to help companies and governments in the journey of sustainability. We need to engage consumers. And sometimes this communication by companies to consumers, it is a way to engage them in that journey. For instance, when you communicate about the ability to recycle one packaging of your product, this is extremely important because if the consumer doesn't help you in the recycling process, in the collection, sorting, and recycling process of that packaging, all the efforts that company can do on designing packaging for recycling will be wasted because we need the consumers also to interact. So these two elements, engagement of consumers in the journey and also communicating consumers on the good efforts so consumers can differentiate the good and bad companies, makes this communication on sustainability a critical topic going forward. So I will keep it like that, but of course I'm really looking forward to going into more details during our conference.
Thank you very much. Look, one more thing. What I think personally is that we as the end users tend also to reward the company that is more sustainable. This is also a huge factor because we tend to choose a product that is more climate friendly, right? This is normal, and this is why I believe that we should kind of give an incentive to the companies to do more in that direction. I'm speaking the consumers, and the companies, that's why they should be communicating with us, letting us know. And the companies that are, let's say, a bit behind, this is a good motivation for them to pick up. But you mentioned one thing here is also the risk of greenwashing, and this is definitely a risk that we should bear in mind. So would you tell us a little bit, how does Nestlé deal with the communication on ESG?
Yes, and of course, Nestlé has a lot to communicate on ESG because we are very active in all these pillars that I mentioned. For instance, we have an ambitious agenda in climate to go to net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and halving that emissions in 2030, which is around the corner. And the footprint, the carbon footprint of Nestlé is very big, and the challenge is big because almost 95% of our carbon footprint is coming from areas where that are not directly in our control. It's coming from our suppliers or clients, so our supply chain. So we have a lot to do. On plastic and packaging, the same. I mean, we have our vision and ambition is that none of our plastic packaging should end up in oceans or landfills. We really want to embrace circular economy, so there's no waste, and every packaging that is used can be recycled and be part of another circular use. So we have a lot to communicate. We have also a lot of brands that can communicate this. Nestlé has more than 2,000 brands worldwide, and we operate and we sell our products in more than 180 countries. So the potentiality of this communication is huge. But you also mentioned the risk of greenwashing. So the risk is also big. And that's why we got very serious about it, and we got organized, and we have very strict rules, internal rules and principles that we need to follow. The marketeers need to follow in order to make a very responsible communication, a very clear, transparent communication that is substantiated, that is not misleading consumer in any way. And I will gladly share more of those principles in our conference. But governance is also very important, and here I am a lawyer, and we are talking to lawyers, and that's why it is important for us to know that we play a key role in this process of ESG communication. And this is something that it is somehow challenging for us because it's a new topic for lawyers. Communications and claims is not new, and we have, in every jurisdiction we have laws that protects consumers. But here we are dealing with a very specific type of communication that is leveraging efforts on topics that are very complex because we're dealing with climate change, with pollution, with human rights abuses, etc. So the sensitivity of that communication is higher than any other normal marketing claim. It's very important that we as lawyers engage early on in the process, and Nestlé has a solid and robust governance process to make sure that the legal views are considered together with other views in the review and approval process of this communication.
Thank you very much, Esteban. Indeed, you kind of throw me to my next question, because indeed you must have so many parties, starting from the supply chain people, communications people, manufacturing people, compliance. A lot of it's a very complex procedure, and can you tell us in brief on I would say a tier one company like Nestle with over 2,000 brands? What are the major challenges that you would highlight in communicating ESG?
Yeah, so clearly we expect that this challenge of communicating externally will only increase. We see that the consumer is rightly so more and more engaged. The consumer is looking at products that have these benefits for the environment, benefits for their communities. So we are just experiencing the early days of a very long journey on communicating on ESG. We see increasing monitoring of stakeholders that are looking after the companies to see if they are responsible in these communications, and we are starting to see a lot of litigation in the US, but also in Europe and elsewhere. So clearly, from a legal point of view, the legal risk will only increase. The communication will increase, and the legal risk will only increase. Therefore, the main challenge is to have a very solid, robust governance process to approve this communication. And also, we are facing new regulation, and the conference will deal with a lot of new regulation, trying to deal with these topics of claims and ESG communication. We welcome the regulation. I think it's a good news for us, for lawyers and companies, that governments are starting to regulate on these topics. This is not increasing the risk. All of the contrary, is lowering the risk, because this is bringing certainty, clarity on what companies can communicate. And that's another role of us lawyers in these early days on the journey, to really get closer, do what we are trying to do now, learn on these topics, and try to advocate for the good regulation. We need to help authorities, we need to help industry associations to establish good rules where companies can act responsibly and can compete responsibly, not misleading the consumers in this important journey. Because if we are very truthful and we are very honest with the communication, we will be helping at the end of the day the sustainability agenda, because we will be rewarding, as you said it, companies that are doing good, positive things for the environment, the planet, and society. So ultimately, this is what we want to do. We want to build a better world, a better society, and a responsible communication on ESG can contribute to that construction.
Esteban, thank you very much for the answer, and I'm very happy to hear that you're embracing the new regulation. Do you mind if I ask you, what do you think would be the challenge for the industry in general when it comes to communication? Because understandable that Nestle is a leader of the market, and pretty much you have the processes in a certain way where you are the pioneers in sorry, you're the pioneers in embracing the new regulations and putting it all into action at your earliest possibility. But when we're speaking about the industry itself, right, and even if we look at your supply chain, because your supply chain is not only consisting of the companies that sell you dairy products, right? It's a very large and complex supply chain, and your supply chain industry, other food companies, or different industries in general, apart from the banking. Banking is a separate island. I believe it's a little bit different there, but about the industry, can you make a big picture? Can you comment on the big picture? What the kind of challenges would the industry be looking at?
Sure. And for me, when I talk about industry, I will maybe focus on the food industry, which is our industry, and of course, each industry has its own challenges, and I wouldn't dare to enter into other industry challenges, but we will have professionals maybe of other industries that could be better placed than me to talk about those. But on the food industry, the main challenge that when we're talking about sustainability issues are the challenges that are coming from the current way of farming. And the current way of farming, of course, is unsustainable. We need to change it. Because the current ways of farming is basically a way that is not very respectful of forests, is depleting sometimes water resources, is abusing of agrochemicals and pesticides and fertilizers. Also, the people, the farmers that are working in the agriculture sector sometimes has not the fair and right living incomes and labor conditions. So we are facing a lot of challenges as an industry. And this is not a topic that Nestle or any other big multinational alone can
Correct.
Can repair.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the complexity of the topics, but also because of the scale of the topics. So we really need everyone engaged. I mean, there's no small, medium, or big companies here. We are all in this together. With everyone needs to play their part, but also, of course, multinationals have a big and important part, because we can be also the drivers of this. If we ask our suppliers certain conditions, certain standards, because of our size, we can really drive change. And this is what we would like to do. We would like to lead a change in agriculture and to move from this unsustainable way of farming to a regenerative way of farming, where we can go back to different ways of dealing with the soil, with nature, with water, that also with basically putting the farmer also in the middle, and by working on a new way of farming in this regenerative agriculture, we will be tackling many root causes of the unsustainable system that we have right now. So that's it's a big challenge ahead of us, but we need everyone to help, and also regulation. I mean, not we discuss about regulation in the communication, but also we need public policy, we need regulation on many different things, because we need to create the change and sustain the change, and with the right policy we will be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Esteban, for this answer. It's a common misconception that the food processing manufacturing sites are the major contributors, which basically it is still farming that needs to be solved, right? Is that what you're saying.
Yes, this is where we have the biggest opportunity in the farming side, in the agriculture side, because the agriculture production is accountable for a big part of the emissions, but also in the loss of biodiversity. So this is where the change can have the better impact and the biggest opportunity as well, because I like to see the opportunity behind the challenge. If you have a problem, but if you are able to solve it, that's a big opportunity for the planet and also particularly for the poorest countries, because all these things are happening in most of the cases in the global south, where the poorest conditions are impacting, are hitting, and this is where we need to drive financing to those sectors, and by changing that sector, you will have a multiplicity effect in all the different pillars that we discussed.
Esteban, I can keep you forever at this podcast, and I understand that we have to leave some of the talks for the conference. So, first of all, thank you very much again for joining us. We're looking forward to have you at the conference, and looking forward. Thank you once again.
Likewise. See you soon in Belgium.